They already had a great defense. Now this defense is, I don't know, what's the next word outside of great? Whatever it is, find one in your Columbia dictionary. But it's one of those
all-time
deals.
great.
All-time great. There you go. But he brings something totally different to the equation for them. Then Stefon Diggs, we already know what Stefon is, one of the top, depending on who you're arguing with, one of the top 5 receivers in the league. They could shore up their running game and not make everything dependable on Josh Allen to run the ball. So you got all that going. But when you remove the offensive coordinator from the equation, it hurts. It hurts. And I understand people think that because Ken Dorsey's been in the building. You know how it is. You can do a whole lot of things till you try it. Yeah. I mean, it's like, oh, man,
in theory,
you can do a lot of things till you try it. And so being under that microscope and that pressure, as you know, Jay, we talk about it all the time, with Coach K and now all of a sudden John Shire, it's different.
Huge adjustment.
And so that's going to be a huge adjustment for Ken Dorsey as an offensive coordinator. Thinking, calling plays at the right time. Because you say to yourself, Brian Daboll will do this. And what happens is it affects the head coach because the head coach now has to manage this new coordinator when he didn't have to with the other guy because he didn't have to think twice on whether or not to go for it.
See, it's interesting because when you think about the Bills, with the way they had that shootout against the Kansas City Chiefs and the progression that you've seen this team go on, it feels like the next step is get to an AFC championship game, win a Super Bowl. Out of all the teams in the AFC, they seem like they have the most pressure on them, don't they?
They've gotten to the AFC Championship game. This team has to get to the Super Bowl. If they don't get to the Super Bowl, there's going to be a lot of talk about Josh Allen not putting this team over the hump. Exactly. Outside of maybe the Packers, there is no team that has more pressure to get to the Super Bowl than the Bills.
I agree with that basic premise, but what if, let me give you a couple scenarios, and it could easily happen. They face either the Bengals or the Chiefs in the divisional round.
You love the Bengals.
And they win they get past the AFC defending champions or past the Chiefs into the AFC. Forget the Bengals. They get past the Chiefs to get into the AFC title game and then get knocked off by the Chargers.
Same thing, though.
To me, that's a step forward.
No, same thing.
That's the same thing.
Because
if you beat the demon.
You just like Evan said, you just were in the AFC Championship game. Your next step is the Super Bowl.
And you just paid all these guys.
You just were there. You cannot go here. You got to go there, Max.
Outside of the quarterback, which the Rams went and got Stafford. Outside of the quarterback, the Bills are as all in as the Rams were last year. They went and paid for Von Miller. They paid to keep Stephon Gilmore.
Yep. But wait, Evan.
They are the same team. There is just as much pressure on the Bills this year as there were on the Rams last year.
But factoring in what Key said about Brian Daboll, like how do you factor? Like what's the adjustment period?
The Rams
you don't care that the
Rams had the best defense in
pressure is based on perception. So the point is here, one of the things that maybe increases the pressure on the Bills is not only do they now have to take a step forward, which means getting to the Super Bowl, but they're doing so under lesser conditions because they lost Daboll, right? The perception is higher and the reality is lower. I think a lot of this, though, is the Von Miller signing. Like Von Miller, because
Von is part of it.
He like when you think about it, Super Bowl MVP, and he was a huge part of their pass rush on the way to the Super Bowl with the next team. Yeah. It's almost like you're signing a pumped up Robert Ory or some dude who, like, when you see him, because I would say Von Miller has been a better pass rusher than Ory was a forward. But this is a championship player.
This is what Evan was just saying.
Hold on, the Rams had the best defense in football. Sorry, Key. The Rams had the best defense in football 2 years ago, and they lost their defensive coordinator, and the pressure on them to win the Super Bowl did not change.
Defensive coordinator.
But
it doesn't matter.
When you lose your DC, it's different than losing your offensive coordinator.
So that's what I'm saying. So it does matter.
Teams lose defensive coordinators all the time, and the defense still.
Why?
Because the defense is just different. It's 3 coverages, a couple pass rush schemes, and that's pretty much.
How about in-game adjustments, though?
So doesn't losing Brian Daboll put more pressure on Josh Allen?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
That if the Buffalo Bills don't get to the Super Bowl, this season for them is a complete failure.
I think it puts less pressure on him. I think because how do you not factor? I know, but how do you not factor in, Key, when you have a new coach, the time it takes to get acclimated to the calls? As athletes, that's a real thing.
You do factor that into it, but the fact of the matter is, you went out and you got Matthew Stafford and Von Miller. You paid Stephon Gilmore and Jalen Ramsey, okay? You just paid Cooper Kupp in Stefon Diggs. And you also got Matthew Stafford and Josh Allen that you paid. So you look at all of those key pieces and components that the Buffalo Bills have that the Rams had. The Rams had all the pressure in the world with the top defense.
But I'm with Jay here. I disagree. I agree. The Bills are facing the most pressure in the AFC to make the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's quite what the Rams were facing last year because the head coach and his whole system, he identified a quarterback of another team and shipped out a number 1 overall draft pick and 2 firsts and everything. Yeah. So, like, and it was also an older guy who had a lot to prove because of Detroit. And they never, so, like, to me, there was more pressure on the Rams last year than there is on the Bills this year.
Coach Sean McDermott is still there in Buffalo. He didn't leave, right? They were in the AFC Championship game. The Rams were not in the AFC Championship game prior to
I don't know if you've considered this, though. Daboll's not there anymore. And, Key, let me explain something to you. The offensive coordinator who's a play caller.
Tell the value of the OC, Max. Break it down for him.
But when you look at it, it made me lose my thought.
We got to go to break. We got to go to break anyway. We'll come back after break.
McDermott. Wait a minute. McDermott.
You made me lose my thought.
I'm sorry. Now I feel bad.
That's what he does. It gets you talking in circles now.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.